I want to talk for a moment today about accountability. I want to talk for a moment about the President of the United States and something he said. I did a rant last week and I was talking about how women have the right to vote, but they've never had to be accountable for their vote. And I know when I say stuff like that, people like to turn it into some misogynistic, like girl-hating comment of some kind, and it's really not at all. It's just a fact of life, you know. The founding generation, they put up. It was put up or shut up, and they put up. I think one of the biggest frustrating things for us Americans as we sit on the outside looking in at the power structure of our country, we see a lack of accountability. You know, if you're a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps, you lose a rifle, you're going to go to jail. But if you're the President of the United States and you decide to pull out of a country that we've been on a anti-terrorist mission for 20 years, you can pull out and leave, $50 billion of equipment behind, usable military equipment. No problem. The problem is there's no accountability. It's out of my hands, Joe Biden. It's out of my hands. Oil prices are crazy. It's out of my hands. We had to leave Afghanistan. It's out of my hands. You know, Russia just attacked out of the blue. We had no idea. It's out of my hands. Energy prices are through the roof. So weird. It's out of my hands. Mr. President, it's not out of your hands. You may not know this all these years suckling on the teat of American greatness, but you've actually Forrest Gumped your way into the most powerful position on earth. You are the guy for whom it is actually not out of your hands. It's out of my hands, but it's not out of your hands. Now, Mr. President, you may not understand this, but oil is a commodity that's traded on a market. It has a futures component to it, and it has a long pipeline or production line before it makes it to market. So there's a lot of components that add up to today's price. And one of the greatest factors adding up to today's price is when companies look at what their future costs for development are. Now, if you need to read Hubert's Peak, you need to read some books about oil. You're gonna have to take it for granted. I got a stack of books that I've read about oil and energy consumption. If you haven't done that, you should listen to me and maybe be skeptical and go read some books. The great lesson of the Trump presidency is that capitalism responds like a light switch to good decision making. President Trump, for all of his shortcomings and things many people didn't like about him, he turned the country on like a light switch. And everyone could say, oh, that was from the policies of the Obama administration. And that is a reflexive and inaccurate statement. The Obama administration, if you remember, it said 1.8% growth was the new norm. 2% should never be expected. It's the postmodern economy. It's a different kind of capitalism. Blah 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 blah. And Trump shows up, and the economy blows up because pressure matters. Let's say every day you come home from work and your wife rags on you about something. And then she rags on you about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And you guys play kissy face. And then the next day she does it again and she does it again. And she does it for years and years and years and years and years. How much does it oppress you? How much does it shut your life down? How much does it quell creativity and vibrancy in your coupleship? What happens if the ruling class has got its thumb down theoretically with regulation, with slow walking permits, with derailing the free market and being ideologues about a green economy or ideologues about global warming? What happens if decades of that go by? What happens to the free market? It gets oppressed and it feels down and it's downtrodden and it's sad. And somebody comes along and you get home from work and your wife's not there anymore and there's somebody else there. And she's a hot chocolate mess and she's hot. She says, hey, I got dinner ready. We're going to fuck afterwards. And listen, go quit your job. You hate your job. Just quit your job. It'll work out. What is that? That puts bounce in a man's stride. Well, that's what happened when Trump became president. He basically said, listen, I want everybody to fuck. I want to fuck, and I want you all to fuck. I want to make money, and I want you to make money, and I don't want any of your money. I want to make my own money. Let's fuck. And you know what the country did? The country cocked the leg up, and we got to it. I have never seen in my adult life an economy like we had 15, 16 months ago. Then what happened is they used COVID to shut him down because they hated him so much. They hate him so much they were willing to tank the country to tank him. You know, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. They were happy to throw out the baby with the bathwater. The problem is they couldn't stop it. They couldn't figure out a way to undo their insanity during the COVID madness. So now they see that they're personally going to be routed during the midterms, and now they've gotten, all of a sudden, the mask mandates are dropping, and all of this is happening. And the president says, Mr. President, what about gas prices and this, that? And he says, it's out of my hands. It's Russia's fault. It's Russia. You see a theme here? It's Russia. Well, Donald Trump got elected. He cheated with Russia. He's colluding with Russia. It's about Russia. Well, Mr. President, you've been president now for a year. Gas prices have doubled. It's really affecting people around the country. There are empty shelves in grocery stores. Americans aren't used to seeing that. Prices have doubled on many things, many goods. It's out of my hands, he says. It's not out of his hands. You guys need to write letters today to your congressmen, to your senators, especially if they're Democrats. It's not out of their hands. And what happens when English majors who go to law school and become politicians is that they don't understand economics, mathematics, and they don't understand how these stacked marginal increases add up to large increases for us, the end user and consumer. Your average cheeseburger in this country goes 550 miles before you stick it in your booger liquor. That means the burger you eat has happened because of oil. That means the scissors your hairdresser has are because of oil. They were in large measure probably made in a country that was using coal or oil to refine the steel and process them. Everything in this country is energy-based. Energy. Every industry, energy. The food industry, energy. And then, even if you can find some industry that you can pull out of your ass that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head while I'm ranting, it can't get to anybody without oil and gas and electricity. So people are out there buying electric cars because they think it's going to insulate them from energy. It's not. It's just using coal or oil or gas to make electricity that runs through a wire that loses much of its magnitude in the transmission because of the laws of entropy. And you put electricity in your car, it's still oil-based electrical energy. Or it's nuclear-based, and chances are you don't want a nuclear power plant in your backyard, even though it is the future of our species. Mr. President, it is all in your hands because the value of things and the cost of things are not the same. And the cost of something is a sum of all of its parts. And one of those is futures and pressure from legislation in the government. So if you want to drop oil prices tomorrow for American, stop saying there are 9,000 permits for drilling that are not being used. Exploration is interesting. For those of you who don't know this, you don't go get a permit to drill an oil well and you drill a hole in the ground and boom, you get oil. You explore and you get permits and then you go explore those areas and you look. You don't, and permits are expensive and they take time. You don't go exploring everywhere and then get permits unless there's some big pot of gold waiting for you. So it puts a downward pressure on exploration. Say, hey, we can't put money in that. They're not going to give us the permit anyways. We need to focus on what we've got. So we are the cleanest energy producing country on planet Earth. Nobody produces energy cleaner than us. Nobody uses hydrocarbons cleaner than us. And we have a lot of them. There are estimates that say we have up to 200 years of just traditional standard as it is today hydrocarbons in the United States for us and for our allies. What that means is we can project our power and our influence and freedom, and we can disrupt the world's autocrats with energy to our allies. So right now, all of you greenies that voted for Biden, all of you lefties that hate Trump and don't like Republicans, you have now voted for Biden and the Politburo, who are now getting in bed with Maduro, the Saudis again, and Iran. Because Russia bad. Russia oil bad. And why are they doing that? Because they don't want to employ great Americans in Pennsylvania and Texas and allies like Canada. They shut down a pipeline, 80,000 barrels a day. It's a big number. We use just shy of 1 million barrels a day. I think that number's right. Might have one of my zeros off. It's either 1 million. I don't think we use 1 billion barrels. I think it's 1 million barrels a day. 80,000. It's a whole lot like 8%. And the oil market is on a 1% margin of consumption and production. So the president is a moron. The people around him, Ron Klain and the other folks, they're morons. They're not morons because they're Democrats. They're morons because they don't understand how everything they do affects everything. They want gas to be $10 a gallon so that we go buy electric cars. And they don't understand, their little liberal arts minds, that energy isn't free. It comes from someplace. Whether it's the gas station down the street or a 10,000 barrel oil chamber sitting next to a gas-fired power plant, it's still all hydrocarbon-based energy production. The president is doing this. Now, the Russia crisis in Ukraine, we should all be really clear about this. It is the fault of American women. It's your fault. American women, it is your fault there are kids being killed in Ukraine today. It's your fault. Women. Now, I'm going to explain myself, but I need to be real clear here. I'm not speaking in metaphor. If you are a woman in the United States It is your fault there are children and people being slaughtered in Ukraine today. Now, guys like me and my son and my dad and my grandfather, we will suffer the consequences of your stupid fucking voting. If you voted for Joe Biden and feckless leftism, and if you're a guy and you did that, shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you for being so short-sighted and emotional that you can't be rational and join us in the post-enlightenment, the post-enlightenment world of not witchcraft, but science. Facts over fiction. Math over mysticism. Where we don't burn people at the stake because they're witches. We look at the data and make a rational decision. Reason over emotion. If you're a guy and you voted, now look, guys didn't vote for this administration. Women voted for this administration. Blacks vote for Democrats, and less of them than ever. So I consider that a demographic that it's getting its head pulled out of its ass. Hispanics voted differently than they ever have before and more conservatively than ever. I consider that a demographic getting its head pulled out of its ass. White women in this country have their heads up their fucking asses. If you voted for Joe Biden because of Donald Trump's grab the pussy comment or Don Lemon and Anderson Cooper's take on conservatism in America, I gotta talk to my dog here. You stop that. I'm just gonna give her a little talking to. I'm okay. It's your fault. It is your fault. Because when I turned 17, I had to register for the Selective Service, and so does your son, your nephew, and every boy on your street, every man you've ever dated, and every man that's divorced your ass. Every man you've left. And every man you've stayed married to. We all had to register for the Selective Service. It's a real wake-up call. It's a come-to-Jesus moment for your typical male. At 17, the government says, hey, you need to register for the draft. And your mom says, oh, you don't have to do that, honey. There's no more draft. And you go to apply to college, and college says, yeah, you need your Selective Service filled out or we can't admit you. It's a real wake-up moment. They don't have the draft actively right now, but we're registered for Selective Service. Why? In case your country needs you, they will call on you and you have to go. Girls don't have that moment. Just like many guys have looked at a girl's ass and been popped in the mouth by a dude who's had a couple of beers. So we learn how to put up our blinders and be respectful and not flip people off. A dude, you flip a guy off on a wrong day, wrong time, he might crawl out of his car, crawl in your window and beat the fuck out of you. That's a guy's universe. The purview is, it's a man's world. It is a man's world to get punched in the mouth and to win if you do the right thing. I think it's a woman's world. Women flip people off, make brash statements, say all kinds of stuff, and they got fucking nothing to back it up. But they're wits. Good for them. But my point is, when you go to vote, men have all registered. We've had to put our name down, even if you're a tranny, and say, here's my name, here's my social security number, and if you need me, now I'm registered. You know where to get me if you need me. It makes you think about voting a little differently. Now, it makes you get out of your house and your home and your heart and vote with some rationality and some big picture thinking. You will never hear a guy vote, oh, he's handsome. Oh, he's good looking. I really like him. You won't hear guys say that. It is women's fault. Women, you have blood on your hands. Your actions have consequences. Your actions have consequences. Your votes have consequences. So here's what happens if you're a tender-hearted female in the United States and you don't like the president's Grab them by the pussy comment. Here's what happens. You elect one of the most incompetent people who's ever served in the United States Senate from a corrupt family that undermines energy and begins to undermine our economy, which undermines our ability to project force and our will around the world, which overall is mostly good. And the minute we don't do that, bad players step into that vacuum. When you project weakness at school, the bully will step into that space. Girls don't get it because you haven't been beat up by a dude. Well, I mean, some of you have. But every dude has confronted getting his face caved in by somebody. 20 million barrels of oil per day. I want to see that note. Somebody just made a comment. Damn it. Oh, where? 20 million barrels of oil per day. We currently produce around 12 million barrels of oil a day. Keystone Pipeline with 800,000. All right, thank you, Will. It's not nothing, it's significant. Yeah, it's almost 1/20th. It's a lot. It's significant. I said 8%. Not too far off. Anyway, we've been unaccountable for voting. So what we do is we vote in weakness, we vote in bad leaders, and we make these decisions that are not coupled to science. Now, Germany's been making these decisions, and they have a problem with energy poverty in their country. And they're very, very dependent on Russia, the adversary that we are there trying to neutralize with our presence in Europe. They've become dependent upon their adversary for energy because their own country are such cowards. They lack the might and the will to make their own energy. So while they've gone green, they've quadrupled or even more the cost of energy, making it very expensive to live there. As for an average citizen, energy becomes a larger and larger part of your annual cost of living. And they've created a sort of energy poverty. And if we're not careful, they're going to do it here. And they're trying to do it. Peppermint Patty and Ron Klain and Joe Biden, they don't pay for gas. They ride around with people driving them. Now, I don't want to make class warfare. I'm a big fan of the rich, and I'm all for people getting wealthy in this country. But they're making decisions that don't affect them, that hurt everyone. And they don't talk about the cost of these decisions when they tell you girls to vote this way or that way. They just say, Orange man bad. He bad women. He hate women. Bad orange man. You're bad if you vote for him. It's not true. So let's just weigh it out. Today we're going to do a little weigh it out between Biden and Trump. If you vote for Biden, you have voted for a guy who is on the record saying awful things about gender and race repeatedly over 45 years in office, not on a radio show, in the hallowed halls of Congress. You vote for a guy who's been on the wrong side of every major geopolitical decision he's spoken out on in the last half century. You vote for a guy that showed our allies we can't be counted on to communicate or trusted on with the vision when the military's involved in Afghanistan. You have voted for a guy who has shown American lovers and sympathizers globally. Let's say you're in Afghanistan and you love America because of what it's done for you and your country. You now can hate America because you can't count on them because they left in the middle of the night with their tail between their legs and left smoking ruins in their wake. Now, if you're in Ukraine this week, you may love America as a Ukrainian, but you also go, yeah, America's not what it used to be. Look how they ran out on Afghanistan. They're not going to help us out. You've also shown the enemy that. You've shown Vladimir Putin that we will run out with our tail between our legs. We will run out and not support our allies. We will run out. We don't have the grit to stick it through. Yeah, I knew I was a little off on the number. That's why I said I wasn't really sure, but my order of magnitude is accurate on what a percentage of consumption to production the Keystone Pipeline was, for sure. So we've shown our enemies we don't have the grit and we don't have the will to stick it out. We've shown the people who like us we don't have the grit and we don't have the will to support them. And what does that do? It emboldens Putin to do what he wanted to do anyways. You can't in good conscience, as an honest person, think he would have done this with Trump in the White House. It just wouldn't have fucking happened. And while we're all looking at that, what do you think China's doing right now? China's fixated on Taiwan. So for you girls who voted for Biden because you didn't like Trump and you were tired of his divisive tweets, oh my God. What you put in was a guy who got a bunch of people killed in Afghanistan, and right now in Afghanistan, the raping of little boys is back on every Thursday night, and the rape rooms are back on. Yeah, rape rooms, every Thursday night. If you don't know about them, Google it, or ask a veteran you know, and if you don't know a veteran, shame on you, fucking find one. Ask them about Thursday night rape rooms in Afghanistan. And ask them what their code word was when they ran across one. If they don't know about that, they were a rear echelon fucking pogue back on a fob or a base, and they never went out in town. So we're out of Afghanistan and the rape is back on. We're out of Afghanistan and the stoning of women is back on. Good on you, we're out. We're out of Afghanistan. Terrorism is back in business over there. It is a matter of time. I read a national intelligence estimate a couple weeks ago about what's going on in Afghanistan right now, and it gave you fucking chills. But good for you. We pulled out with our tail between our legs, and we didn't leave special operations there to do the work in the dark that we need them to do. But good for you. We're out. I'm cool with us being out, but just be real clear about what being out means. It means rape is on, stoning is on, and terrorism is on. Okay? Just be honest. And when you do that, and you project that weakness, the bad guys that we kind of always keep at bay with our ships at sea, with our airmen in bases, with our aircraft doing flybys, with our air-to-air intercepts between our pilots and theirs, we keep them like, fucking don't mess with America. We also made this look easy. We made running through countries look easy. Because Jesus, the Russians were screwed up in Afghanistan for 20 years. We walked through that place in a month. Oh, Iraq is going to be this, Iraq is going to be that. We ran through that place like Al shit through a tin horn. So sixth largest standing army on planet Earth. America's going to blah, blah, blah. It'll be the next Vietnam. We ran through that place like nothing. Because the Eastern Bloc and everybody supplied by them are mostly paper tigers. You know what Russia knows? Russia knows they can't beat us. Russia knows head to head we will eat their fucking faces off. That's not nationalism. It's a fact. War is about work ethic, supply chain, moving material and goods, and bringing a team to support the fighters. We're the best at that. We're awesome at that. They're not. We don't have conscripts in our army, in our Marine Corps, in our Navy, in our Air Force. They're all guys like me who raise our hands and, yo, look, put me in, coach, sounds great. That's not who they have. So when you vote for weakness, and you kick out military officers because they won't take an experimental vaccine, and you think that's good for the leadership and the cadre of the military. You think it's good to kick out 18-year fighter pilots because they won't take a vaccine, because they're young and healthy, they're not in the danger zone, and they're in a demographic They're concerned. They've made a medical choice with their doctor that the risk outweighs the benefit. When you kick those people out, you've kicked out the patriots. And all you have left are the sycophants, the bureaucrats, and the hacks, and the yes men. And when that happens, and you have a meeting with the president, and the president's numbers are down, and he has the worst polling in modern presidential history, what's the number one thing that'll distract Americans? It's patriotism in war. And it's the number one thing you can do to save your presidency if your approval rating is resting around 30%. Gin up a war with one of our arch adversaries, and nobody's going to tell you how awful it can be because they're a bunch of yes men hacks. If I ever get a chance to stand toe-to-toe with Mark Milley and have words with him, I'll have words with him. If he gets sassy with me, I will slap him across his face for all the people he's killing. Joe Biden, too. He needs to be slapped across the face. So my advice to you all, while you're talking to the women in your world, you're talking to the women in your life, and we want them enfranchised, and we want them to be part of this great American project because they've always been. We have to make sure that we don't talk about politics in platitudes. We have to talk about it in policy and repercussions. Because the thing our country lacks right now is accountability. Our president lacks accountability. Our ruling class lacks accountability. When's the last time somebody lost $1 billion and went to jail? When's the last time somebody lost $1 billion and got embarrassed or kicked out of office for it? What we do is we persecute rivals and we do not punish crime. We persecute people we disagree with, and we fail to prosecute crime. And when that happens, what else is there? Because accountability is the cornerstone of the American experiment and the American Republic. Individual accountability, self-determinism. Locke, Hume, Montesquieu all talked about this. It's the cornerstone of the American idea. And if you abandon it, you've disconnected every decision from the repercussions. And now the mob is in charge. Mr. President, the buck stops there. It's never out of your hands. If I were king today, I used to get together with my friends and we'd have a if I were king night. What are my solutions to fix the world? I'm going to give you some solutions. Here we go. Because I've just bitched a little bit, and now here are the solutions. This would change the price of gas tomorrow. And within 30 days, we would see a trend towards the cost and the value being the same instead of being in discord with each other. First thing I would do, the unconscionable act of taking a licensed, approved energy project that has billions of dollars and thousands of jobs and lives attached to it, that's been approved, and disapproving it retroactively. Can you imagine? Every one of you, you're a plumber, you own an ice cream shop, you have a restaurant, you've had your licenses and permits, and the town comes and takes them away from you and says, we're taking away your permit. You would cry foul. Let's be honest. The Keystone Pipeline had its permits, it was approved, it was all they were doing is making it. Billions of dollars invested. And they had their permits revoked. That's gangster shit. Gangster. It's un-American. So I would immediately reinstate the previous word of the good faith of the American people and our government and its representatives to allow the Keystone Pipeline. I would re-ratify, recertify the permits they already had, and I would open up and say, get the pipeline going as fast as you can. You're cleared, and I'm going to fast track anything you come to me with. And I would say it out loud for everybody here. I'm going to fast track everything you come to me with. I would go to my energy producers, small and large, in Texas, Oklahoma, West Virginia, and Alaska, and say, folks, we're counting on you. We don't need you to carry muskets. We need you to carry rigs. We need your workers and your derrick workers out. We need you drilling as fast as you can. Now, it'll take a year or two to get that energy in the pipeline, but the futures would change on the futures commodity market instantly. The world would go, oh, okay, America's going to make energy. We don't have to buy it from Venezuela, a terrorist state with a murderous dictator. We don't have to buy it from Russia, a terrorist state with a murderous dictator. We don't have to buy it from Iran, a terrorist state with numerous murderous dictators. Or we don't have to buy it from Saudi Arabia, a terrorist state with a murderous dictatorial family. That's solution number one. Those two things right there would stabilize the energy market across the globe. It would send shudders to OPEC. It would freak out the Russians. The price of oil would drop. It'd probably go to $80 a barrel. Like that. Everyone would go, oh shit, America's opening it for business. Just like it did when Trump was in office. That's easy. Second thing I'd do, seems really simple. I would send out a memorandum to the Customs and Border Patrol that says, mea culpa, my bad. The lefties leaned on us too hard. We tried to make these idealist concessions. It didn't work. Do your damn jobs. Enforce the border. Close the borders down. Turn the energy on. And then the next thing I would do is I would abandon Build Back Better, and I would abandon social programs like changing our educational system, and I would do an infrastructure project for the United States. I would say, hey, you know what? We're gonna stop these social re-engineering programs because we don't have it all figured out. We want good roads and bridges and infrastructure in the United States, and we need our electrical grid robustly modernized. That's what I would do. You do those three things, and you announce them tomorrow. The energy situation would change overnight. The power paradigm with the Russians would change because they would lose half their money. And when I say the Russians, I mean Putin. Putin would lose half of his money because it's a petrochemical terrorist state. And if we put our production power into the marketplace and the costs go down, it means his profit goes down and he has less money to wage war in Eastern Europe. This stuff's all interconnected. Hey, stop it. So it's really simple. We need to make sure people understand the accountability of their voting, the accountability of their actions, and we connect them to real things that matter. And it's our kids going off to war. I heard a UFC fighter say the other day, I will dig my boots in the ground here in Arkansas, and if they come here, I will fight and die. But I am not going off to Russia. I don't believe what's going on over there. I'm not going off to Ukraine. These guys are fucking around, and they're getting us close. We have never in our lifetime, I'm 51 years old, we've never in our lifetime been as close to a Holocaust as we are right now. And I'm not being an alarmist. You get Russian fighter jets and NATO fighter jets flying across from each other right over a magic line, and one squadron or one wing of guys flies 2 miles over a border. Somebody gets defensive and shoots down an airplane. We're in a gun-in war. No shit, shoot and fight. You get one convoy gets lost around the border. You get one group of, get a rogue captain. I mean, and it would unleash a chain of events. We would look back and go, what caused all that? Well, we drove up the price of gas. We emboldened the Russians. We approved the Nord Stream pipeline into Germany so that Germany couldn't be defensive in Europe because it's too dependent on its enemy, Russia. Russia's emboldened with money. They're emboldened with America's cowardice. got an oligarch, an oil oligarch named Vladimir Putin who wants to build a legacy. What does he do? He wants to build some semblance of the former Soviet Union, claim back some of the land. Why? He feels his way of life is failing. And instead of us being gracious about winning, we've been rubbing it in his face since '88. The sole surviving superpower. We're the world's only superpower. Arrogant, antagonistic, egocentric Westerners. We haven't had grace in our victory. We caused this. There's no accountability. And the accountability is paid for at the grist mill with young men and a few young ladies, but young men. Just keep that in mind when you vote for people who love trees more than people. They lie about clean air. They lie about global climate change. They lie about the causality and their certainty. Just keep that in mind. Mr. President, it's Vladimir Putin's fault. It's not, it's out of my hands, is a lie. Quit lying. It is in your hands. You're the most powerful man on the planet. Do your job. What's more important? Appeasing Andrea Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. What's more important? Appeasing them or your people being able to afford to get to work every day? Your people being able to afford food? Who do you serve? I encourage you guys all to write. Just Google, hey, who's my congressman, who's my senator, lefty or righty, and fire them off a couple of emails real quick. I hope this president, I think he's too arrogant to be self-reflective. I think he's too unintelligent to be self-reflective from a lifetime before he was an addled old man. And now I think he's just addled, and I think he's too addled to be self-reflective. He's too worried about not shitting his pants. But I wish him the best. I hope these youngsters he's got around him all see the error of their ways and they understand we will be at the gates with pitchforks if they're not careful. All right, that's my vent for the day. I'm gonna get to work. Hey, you fucking savages, thanks for stopping by. Turn off YouTube and get back to work, for God's sake.